So I found actually Storyteller Talks through my friend Matthew Joseph, and I messaged him and said, this is actually a really lovely interview. And I watched a few of them, and I was like, these are nice. These are just, like a photographer's interview, but with nothing to distract. The amount of times we see these things and they're covered in, either advertisements or distractions and stuff like that. And I thought this was a really simple, beautiful idea. I do remember very early in my career, I was in the Peak District photographing a band in the snow, because I used to work in music many, many years ago. And I lent it against my car, and then I drove off. I did not put the tripod in the car. So somewhere in the Peak District, there's a horribly expensive carbon fibre tripod. But then I did have, for some reason, some bamboo sticks in the boot of my car. So when we got to the next location, I had to use gaff tape and bamboo to then create this weird, pyramid to sit the camera on. Because ironically, we didn't need the camera, we didn't need the tripod for the early stuff. But then when I obviously had left it somewhere near the Peak District or in the Peak District, I desperately did need it. So we had to kind of fashion this weird cradle out of bamboo and logs and wood and all sorts. But there is nothing gaff tape can't fix. So gaff tape and zip ties. What I did, stupidly, is I then gaff taped it into the cradle, which then just meant that it was rock solid, but I couldn't adjust focus or zoom. So, it was good. It was good. I was very young at the time. There are actually so many photos that make me smile, but predominantly less because of the photo and more of the experience I had when taking it. I was out in Texas earlier this year shooting a lovely project on barbecue pitmasters, and they could not have been nicer and looked after me more. And the foods, the smells, the smoke in my eye, the burns on my leg from where I accidentally walked into the coal bins, you name it. But I look back on a load of my shoots really, really fondly, and that's kind of, I think, what makes me smile. Either that or something funny happened on the shoot, and every time I look at the picture, I went up to Jeremy Clarkson's farm to photograph him for the Sunday Times magazine cover. And I put him in with all the goats. He gave me a really good lesson, actually. He said, listen, you can get this shot and it'll be a great shot, but it won't be very well lit. Or you can have a very well lit shot and it won't be good. And I was like, I'll tell you what, Jeremy, I'll meet you in the middle. And it turns out what then happened is I lit him nicely. The goats then kind of got a bit berserk, and one of them headbutted me in the, that kind of region. And the picture then of Jeremy went from him kind of doing this to then laughing. And so I got a lovely set of shots and then you can animate them together. So you see the goat coming towards you, headbutting me in the, the nethers, and him then obviously having a hilarious time, and then me collapsing. So yeah, so stuff like that makes me chuckle, because obviously, you remember the fun stuff, right? Yes, I do. I went out to India quite a few years ago to photograph victims of acid violence. And I think about them a lot all the time, and probably multiple times a day. There's actually multiple people I've photographed throughout my career that those images and those experiences will live with me my whole life. And I think about the people I've photographed, and there's one person in particular that I'll always remember. So yeah, I do, and it's not a fun experience. Yeah, but I'm different to probably everyone else. I don't just do photographs of food, or I photograph people, but I try as a portrait guide to photograph literally the breadth of humanity. So I've traveled the whole world photographing people like rubbish pickers in Indonesia, victims of acid violence in India, through to politicians in the highest echelons of world politics, and jumping out of helicopters with defense secretaries, or I have such a weird existence. And then that's before you even kind of get onto my commercial work and stuff, and that's before my personal work as well. It's I just have a very, very odd existence. So it would be dishonest of me to have said no. It might be cooler if I'd said no, because obviously grown men don't cry, but I'm now at 41, I'm very open about feelings and stuff, and yeah, those, particularly some of the people I met in India, they'll live with me forever. I think about them literally all the time. I think as far as a story goes, I maybe am less of a storyteller and more an experience giver. And it sounds like a weird thing to say, but like when I photograph someone, I kind of want to feel like I'm maybe a theatre director, and I'm kind of like putting them up on a stage, and I want them to make them feel like they're amazing. I want them to feel like at their most confident they could possibly be, their strongest kind of emotional point in that moment. And whether it is, whether it's kind of a TV shoot, or whether it's an advertising thing, or whether it's a personal shoot, the ethos is always the same. I want people to look their best, their most confident, their strongest, and just give them, if they don't have it, give them that confidence, and if they already have it, and I want to give them an amazing time. So I want people to kind of come away and be like, well, the pictures were nice, but the way he made me feel, or the way he listened, or that story he told, or I want people to come away from it having had a great time. The authenticity is super important. I would argue it's the most important thing. It is always making people feel as good as they can. I'm not going to try and get people to pretend to be other people. I want to make sure they feel like they can be the best version of themselves. And I think if you're doing that with the people you're photographing, that will come through on the photograph. I don't do any heavy, over the top work on my photos. The grade and stuff actually is relatively light. The skin work hopefully is always quite nice and natural. And I want to just try and basically give people a heightened version of reality. So elevated yet authentic as I can. I don't want to go into this whole world of fakery and stuff like that. And I know some of my work does have comps and backgrounds brought in and stuff like that. But at the same time, I don't want to be using AGI on people and stuff like that. I want authenticity to be a cornerstone of my work. So yeah, it's hugely important. So full disclosure, I use AI a lot, right? But I use AI how I feel AI should be used. So I use it to help me generate workflows. I run the tech consultancy as well, so I'm able to spread this around to a few people, but I'm able to create workflows that will get rid of repetitive jobs for me, and I've managed to get rid of almost all the repetitive jobs. And that is how I feel like AI for photographers should be used. I don't feel like generating inauthentic, regurgitated, algorithmic stuff. I don't feel like that's ever going to be a replacement for the camera. And also, I'm never going to put my camera down. I would still go off and do what I'm doing. The fact that I can get paid for it and have a lovely time doing this stuff, brilliant. But it's not as if I wouldn't be doing this. I remember seeing this great quote from Thierry Henry, and they said, oh, what would you do if you weren't a professional footballer? And he said, well, I'd still be a footballer. Okay, well, I would also, if I wasn't a professional photographer, I would still be a photographer. Wouldn't put the camera down. And AI, I'm seeing various photographers who are saying that they're downing tools and moving exclusively to AI, and I do think I think that's short-sighted. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I feel like we should use AI, but on the back end. We all run businesses. We wear so many hats. AI can be so useful in, making the hat less heavy, if you will. And there's so many things we can use it for that don't actually affect or go crazy on the image and stuff. But if there was no way of me holding the camera, I think I'd be out. I think I'd go off and do something else. And there's other ways that I think my brain would get that hit. I've taken years and years and years to learn this, but the way my brain works is it enjoys photography. It enjoys the aspects of it, the quick fire of it, the chaos really of it, right? And I think if I wasn't allowed to use a camera, if there suddenly came a law and you absolutely were not allowed to touch cameras, I'd go off and find something else that would give my brain that kind of dopamine hit. I don't know. Always thought I'd make quite a good firefighter. So I really respect those guys. It would either be, because rescuing people, supporting people, building people up, I'd find a career with that sort of thing. And I run a tech consultancy anyway, I'm sure I've mentioned. I tend to mention it quite a lot. But that would be probably the other thing I'd go off and do, try and help people. What type of lie are you talking about? Are you talking about a really big lie, or are you talking about a little white lie? Because the problem is, with my work, it is always, I very rarely crop it. I maybe remove little distracting items, which I guess could be considered a lie. The body of my work, they are the true people. They are in the true locations, apart from obviously the comp and studio stuff. But no, I've always tried to I'm quite an honest guy, which is a bit of a funny one. But no, lying to me has never been a thing. I've never actively misled anyone. No, and much as though I would have liked to, maybe. The problem is, I would have to have a pretty catastrophic camera body failure because I always travel with like 2 or 3 bodies. So it would have to be like my whole camera bag would have to fall in the river or like something like that. And I'd be like, oh no, my camera bag's exploded or something. But no, part of my job is that I have to be neutral. So I have to go and photograph people that a lot of people might disagree with on any end of the spectrum. There's people who might be not liked in the public eye and stuff like that. I have to walk in and you take all the politics out of it, you take all the attitude out of it. My mission still, regardless of who it is, you can't be selective with this. I'm a portrait photographer, I have to take portraits of people. So my thing is, regardless of what people think, regardless of what I might think personally, everybody, regardless of who they are, gets the same treatment. Everyone gets built up, everyone gets made to feel like they're on the stage, everyone gets that kind of the same level of treatment, the same terrible jokes, but like, you know, at the same time, like everyone still gets the same treatment. The whole word professional, I take that very, very seriously. So everybody gets treated regardless of who they are. So, you know, I will always try and treat people with the same level of respect. My ritual before, in my studio, I guess, I will have everything laid out. So I'll go down the day before a shoot, I will pack out all the kit, I'll lay everything out on the floor, so then the morning of, or whenever I need to pack the car or the van, I'll have everything laid out, and it's like a mental checklist that I can kind of walk through it all. So the studio always looks like I am like really anally retentive, because I'm like, everything is lined up perfectly, making sure everything gets packed. But no, I guess the ritual during shoots, and this really happens during stressful shoots, on particularly stressful jobs where I am getting kind of like stressed because of, I don't know, that we're running a little bit behind, or the things aren't going quite right, or something like that, I will take myself off, and I have a series of stretches that I do. So I say to Sam, I'm like, Sam, I'm just going to pop to the loo, and I'll disappear off for like only a couple of minutes. I'll go and like look at videos of me playing with my kids, and then I'll do some stretches, and then that normally makes me feel like super happy. And then they're like the release of the stress through the stretches and stuff, and then I'll come back, and then, you know, we'll pick back the time, we'll finish early, the shots will be great, everything and then works out. But yeah, so that I guess is like a mid-shoot ritual. I hope when they got the pictures, they'd be like, these are pretty cool. Like, these people look super confident, they look amazing. I'd like to think that they'd look at it and go, it's cool. I don't feel like my legacy is going to be like a world-changing one for sure, like at all. But I'm loving what I do. I have such an amazing life and such an amazing experience that even if a stranger picked up a role, I would love that my passion and my enjoyment of making people look strong and good would come through, and I hope they'd like feel, you know, that they picked up like a decent set of portraits. People are very complimentary quite a lot, which is really nice, and I'm always terrible at accepting compliments because it's just what I do. Photography is my enjoyment, right? And it's a funny one for me to then get complimented on it, because I'm like, you know, deep down, obviously I love making people feel strong and powerful, but I started photography because of me, and I just enjoy holding the camera, taking the pictures, you know, things like that. So for me to then take compliments, it just feels a bit unusual. But there have been 2 compliments that I'll always remember. The first was from Mark Ronson, and the second was from head of, I can't remember what her title was at the time, I think she was head of AI or head of Watson at IBM. So I photographed Mark Ronson, and he's got this amazing ability to make people feel incredibly present, and a lot of celebrities don't. But Mark Ronson, I will say, is an amazing presence for going, really liked that part of your website. And so most times when you photograph celebrities, they haven't looked at your website, they don't even know who they're being photographed by and stuff like that. Whereas Mark really made me feel like he knew me and my work. So when I introduced to him and he was like, oh yeah, well, you know, really loved that shot on your website and stuff like that, I was like, oh, cool. And then he was like, well, I'm super into it, because that got me thinking about doing something here. And I was like, well, great, because I was going to ask you to do that. He'd be like, yeah, cool, well, let's do that. And I was like, oh, great. And that sort of thing makes a bit of a dream. And then Harriet Green at IBM did the same thing, but hers was even more impressive because at the time my website was completely different. And she said, Tom, I really love the portrait of Adrian. And I was like, Adrian? Oh, right, Adrian. He's like 3 levels deep on the website. So she must have really spent some time going through the website and stuff like that. And then when I showed her the pictures, she was like, I'm going to make it on the website, aren't I? And I was like, yeah. And then at that point, yeah, she did. And I was like, that for me is like a real compliment because people have taken the time to look, understand, and then bring it up and, speak to you about it on the day. It's always incredibly flattering when that happens. There have been so many photos. I've been doing this 20-something years, and there's been so many photos. I think the ones that really, really made me stop and just, when I've been present at the birth of both my children. And so we have photos of both of those wonderful people being brought into the world by obviously my amazing wife. And when you see all of that happening, you realise A, how amazing women are, and then how amazing humans are in general, and then also what the gift is of children. And then obviously then taking a step back, the gift that photography means that I will be able to treasure those moments forever. And it's just an amazingly powerful, I don't have a particularly good memory, but the fact is I take about 30 or 40,000 pictures a year of just my life. So when I'm retired, I will then be able to relive everything again through my children's first steps to the time I was randomly in Dresden and found this kind of bizarre building that was covered in graffiti. There's going to be all sorts of things that I'll be kind of like, I have no idea why I use the Dresden example, but there's so many things. There's just so much power in being able to document and capture stuff that I personally cannot wait to retire, because it means that I then get to sit with all of these images and relive my life again. So yeah, it's an amazingly powerful thing. I'll tell you about my nightmare last night. It was catastrophic, literally catastrophic. I'd bought a flat. I'm not moving house, I'm not buying another flat, but I had bought a house, and for some reason the people in the house previously had got a thumb lock on the door and then put a cat flap next to it. And so what they did, then it was one of these smart cat flaps, because obviously I just dream in tech. And so the cat came through, it then opened up, and then obviously all the people could then just reach in and unlock the door and were just constantly coming in. It was a very, very odd dream. Maybe it's because I've been doing a lot of talking and maybe giving too many things away, and maybe the cat is the interviews, the arm. I don't know. It was honestly, it was bizarre, but like, I don't know, my things are very rarely, if ever, related to work, and they take on these like weird existential things like cats coming in through cat flaps and opening doors and stuff. It's all very odd. But no, honestly, like, I don't know, nightmares for me, they're kind of like few and far between, really. But when they happen, they happen. For all the confidence that I exude, or hope to exude, or hope to have, deep down, actually, I'm not that confident. But the camera knows it gives me the confidence. And so I started photography, and I really got into photography when I was having a really hard time at school being bullied. And it gave me this kind of, not like superpower, but it gave me the escape. And then it really helped me through like a hard time in growing up. And then when I moved to Sheffield, when I had to go and study at university, the camera then became less of a crutch and more of a passport. And so the camera then became my access. And I think I realised quite early on that me and the camera could be infinitely more confident and be able to get more access and be more as a team rather than me on my own. Because the camera is amazing because it allows you in to places and into people's lives, and they open up in a way is really unusual. Because if you just walked up to someone on the street and said, "Can you tell me your entire life story?" It's all right, I'll just sit here and wait. People will be like, this is weird. This is a really odd experience. But if you ring someone up and say, I would love to come down and document you and create photos of you in your workspace, or let me into your life and I'm going to create these portraits, people have spent days with me. And I don't know if it's my personality or whether it's a combination of the camera, but I always feel that people open up and will just welcome you in with a camera. I've always referred to it as my second passport. And so it's always been amazing what it can do to allow you into people's lives, and it breaks down the barrier. And it has always been a fascinating thing for me. So I think what the camera would know about me is how much I value it as a companion. The camera is as part to me as the business as I am to the business. But the camera is such an important part from a psychological point of view. I love people's stories. I just love hearing people's experiences and stories and how they got to places and how they accidentally fell in with this group of people and then that changed the course of their life and stuff like that. I guess it would be, obviously I have a fascination with faces. I have a fascination with people who are doing crafts. I have a fascination with all these things. But boiling it down to one thing would be stories. I love how I react to chaos. I once got really told off on a stag do. Now this is a good story. I once really got told off on a stag do because in chaos and danger, my body and mind slow down and I calm down and I become very calm in a crisis. And we were killing zombies in a shopping centre somewhere on this stag do. And I remember getting told to calm down and take it less seriously by one of the guys who were running the event, because one of the actors was getting really uncomfortable at how much I was organising everyone to flank all these actors dressed as zombies and stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough, point taken. But I guess that would be an amazing skill that most people don't have. When the going gets really tough, my mind slows down and I become I'm incredibly good under a lot of pressure and crisis, because one of my things is that, I always say I'm like the fifth emergency service to my clients, and I parachute into on a lot of my jobs. I can shoot people, I shot Liam Neeson in 4 seconds. And that, by the way, was getting in, setting a light up, firing off 4 frames, and then getting out in 4 seconds. So I'm able to work incredibly quickly under a huge amount of stress that I think most people would really struggle with. I hate that apparently I'm shrinking and that I've got thin teeth, according to my dentist. No, I feel that I am incredibly fortunate to have led the life I have and be present in the life I currently am leading. Hate is such a horrible, strong word. I don't feel like anyone should hate anything. Do I dislike anything about myself? Sometimes I do. My ability to concentrate up until about 6 months ago was quite hard, and I would quite often jump around and do lots of different projects, start a lot of stuff, and then very rarely get into and finish a lot of projects. I guess if I was going to pick one thing that I did dislike about myself, and one thing that I wish I could have changed throughout my entire life and entire career, I would have bought less equipment. On the flip side, the tech aspect I still do enjoy. So, I don't know. But no, do I hate anything? Absolutely not. I feel like I'm incredibly lucky to have lived the life I've lived. I hope that I get to do this for as many years as the world will allow me to do it. 2026 for me, the word I would be using would be rebirth. So I have been working with an amazing mentor recently over in New Zealand. We have been working through a whole ton of stuff. She has really helped me reevaluate how I look at things, rethink how every aspect of the outward-facing part of the business works. It's been a really life-changing experience, and also from a personal point of view, has been so interesting, changing my mindset about what it is I do offer and am able to create. So yeah, I've been working with Christina, she's been amazing, and just working through the process has been incredible. And so 2026, I'm super excited. Whether it's a good year for work or not, I actually don't mind, because it just now, I'm so confident and happy with what I am producing and how I am showing things and how I feel about my work and my business, that actually I feel better about what I am and what I create now than I ever have done previously in 20-something years. So yeah, 2026, I'm really excited because I feel now that my true self is in the work. I really am going to try and bring myself more into my work, my brand, every kind of touch point, and it's been an amazing process to work through it. And I feel like very rarely do we as photographers ever sit and take a holistic approach and take a big step back outside of the brand and look at every touch point and look at all the work. If you are a photographer looking at this and going, that sounds interesting, I would strongly suggest you do it because it's been an amazing process. For me personally, it'll be a big year. Whether it's a big year for work or not, from a world point of view, it's going to be a tough year. You can't really control a lot of that. So what you can control is you, working on you and doing your projects and stuff like that. So now that's kind of what I'm hunkered down. I want to be an amazing dad, a brilliant husband, an okay photographer, but one that really enjoys his job and life. Sorry. It's funny because, I always get to this point and then go, God, did I just chat shit for an hour and a half? And then most people go,